The first thing I noticed about Ava Monroe was her laugh. It wasn't loud, it was that quiet, effortless kind that felt like sunlight through blinds. She was my boss, the creative director at Luminate Media, and the reason I both loved and feared Mondays. She was everything I wasn't: confident, composed, the kind of woman who made silence feel intentional. I, on the other hand, was chaos in a blazer. My name's Elena, 27, marketing associate, professional overthinker, and someone who once spilled coffee on a client's laptop in front of Ava. That was 6 months ago. She'd only said, "You'll learn." And somehow, that became the most encouraging thing anyone had ever said to me. When the company announced our annual business conference in Las Vegas, I nearly backed out. The idea of spending 3 days sharing air, tables, and possibly elevator rides with Ava sounded like emotional suicide. But fate, or my boss's meticulously planned team schedules, had other ideas. The first 2 days went smoothly. We attended panels, smiled at sponsors, and pretended to care about synergy. But by night 3, the stress of presentations and forced networking melted into neon lights and laughter. Our team ended up at a rooftop bar overlooking the Strip, where everything smelled like champagne and possibility. Ava surprised me by sitting beside me, her perfume crisp and clean, like rain on glass. "You've done well this week, Elena," she said, raising her glass. "Really proud of your pitch today." I tried not to blush, but my body betrayed me. "You actually watched it?" "I watch everything," she replied with a smirk. "It's kind of my job." We laughed, and then we drank, maybe too much. Tequila blurred the lines between boss and employee, between admiration and something warmer. Somewhere between the rooftop and the casino, I lost track of time. All I remember are her eyes in the lights, softer than I'd ever seen them, and her hand brushing mine when she said, "You're full of surprises, Elena." The next memory is blurry but vivid, us in a chapel. Neon lights. Laughter. Her lipstick slightly smudged. A man in a cheap suit saying, "Do you take her?" and us both shouting, "Yes." The next morning, sunlight stabbed through the hotel curtains. My head throbbed. I groaned, reaching for the water bottle, and froze. There was a ring on my finger. And beside me, wrapped in white hotel sheets, Ava stirred, her hair tangled, her lips curved in a sleepy smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Monroe," she whispered, voice raspy. Then her eyes fluttered open, realization dawning. "Oh my God," she breathed. "What did we do?" The room was a blur of sunlight, white sheets, and disbelief. For a full minute, neither of us moved, just the sound of the air conditioner humming over the chaos in my head. Ava sat up first, the sheet sliding down her shoulders, revealing a constellation of freckles I'd never noticed before. She looked unreal, like a painting someone had carelessly left in morning light. "Please tell me this is a dream," she murmured, scanning the room for clues. A faint golden band glinted on her left hand. My pulse stuttered. "It's definitely not," I said, voice dry. "We're wearing rings." Ava looked down, blinked, then groaned. "Oh my God. We got married." The words hung in the air like smoke. Married. My boss. The woman I'd secretly written unsent letters to in my phone's notes app. I buried my face in my hands. Vegas should come with a warning label. She actually laughed, soft and incredulous. "You think?" Despite the shock, the sound of her laugh eased something inside me. It was the same warmth that had drawn me in since the first day I'd met her. But now it was tangled with something heavier, something we couldn't name. We both sat in silence for a while, processing. The bed between us felt like a border we were too afraid to cross. Finally, Ava exhaled and said, "Okay. We'll fix this. There's probably some annulment form. We'll figure it out before HR even breathes a rumor." "Right," I said, pretending that didn't sting. But as she got out of bed, wrapping herself in the hotel's white robe, my eyes followed without permission. Everything about her was deliberate, graceful. And yet, for the first time, she looked uncertain. Human. She caught me staring and smiled wryly. "You're quiet. Dangerous." "I'm just trying to remember what tequila brand ruined my life," I muttered. Ava laughed again, then her gaze softened. "You don't regret it, do you?" The question caught me off guard. My brain screamed yes, but my chest whispered no. "I regret not remembering it," I said honestly. Her expression shifted, a flicker of something almost tender. Then she looked away. "We'll handle this like adults. It's just paperwork." But it wasn't just paperwork. That much was obvious by the way her fingers brushed the ring before she took it off and set it gently on the nightstand, as if she couldn't quite bring herself to throw it away. We spent the day signing forms, calling the chapel, and avoiding each other's eyes. Still, every time her hand brushed mine or she smiled out of habit, something inside me ached. Because no matter how temporary this mistake was supposed to be, a part of me already knew I wouldn't forget it. Not her laugh. Not the way her voice had trembled when she'd said we. And definitely not how it felt to wake up next to her, like love had accidentally found me in the middle of a hangover. The flight home from Vegas felt longer than the entire weekend combined. Ava sat beside me, scrolling through her phone, pretending to be immersed in work emails. I stared out the window, the desert below blurring into nothing. Neither of us said much, but silence wasn't new between us. It had always been comfortable. Only now it was loud. I caught glimpses of the ring she'd tucked into her bag. I'd done the same, though I couldn't bring myself to take it off completely. I told myself it was just a ring, but the truth was, it felt heavier than gold. When we finally landed back in San Francisco, Ava turned to me, all professional again. "We'll keep this quiet," she said. "HR doesn't need to know. I'll handle the legal side." "Right," I said, clutching my laptop like it might hold the answer to how to unfeel something. "No one needs to know we accidentally tied the knot in a karaoke chapel." Her lips twitched. "With matching fake Elvis vows." We both laughed, and for a moment, everything felt okay. But the look that lingered afterward wasn't laughter. It was something like longing, disguised as exhaustion. Work was harder than ever. Ava was back to being composed, distant, all sharp lines and calm authority. She didn't so much as glance at me differently during meetings. But sometimes, when we brushed shoulders or when she said my name, something flickered between us, brief, electric. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. That what happened in Vegas was nothing but bad tequila and impulsive humor. But then, one evening, she called me into her office. "Elena, close the door," she said softly. My stomach dropped. Had she changed her mind about keeping it quiet? Was I about to be fired for unintentional matrimony? But instead, she sighed and leaned against her desk. "Look, I've been trying to figure out how to act normal, but this week has been complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated. Her eyes met mine, sharp and searching. "You've been avoiding me." "I'm trying to respect your boundaries," I said quickly. She smiled faintly. And what if I'm the one struggling with mine? The air shifted. It wasn't a confession, not really. But her voice had softened in a way that made my chest tighten. She wasn't just my boss in that moment, she was Ava. The woman who danced in a Vegas chapel with tequila in one hand and my fingers in the other. I took a slow breath. I don't know what this is, I said honestly. Neither do I, she admitted. But pretending it didn't happen feels wrong. We stood there, the city lights behind her casting a faint glow around her hair. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was charged, full of everything we didn't dare say. Then she looked down and whispered, almost to herself, "You still wear the ring." I froze. And when I glanced at her hand, the faint outline of a tan line where hers had been, I realized she noticed mine not because she missed it, but because she missed us. A week later, Ava texted me for the first time outside of work hours. "Ava, need a +1 for a client dinner. Casual. You in?" Me, casual? You mean emotionally or financially? Ava, both. I laughed out loud. The kind of laugh that made my chest feel lighter. I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. The restaurant she picked wasn't casual by any normal definition: crystal glasses, candlelight, waiters who glided instead of walked. I arrived early, nervous enough to check my reflection in every shiny surface. When Ava arrived, the room seemed to shift around her. She wore a black suit, simple and elegant, her hair loose over her shoulders. She smiled when she saw me. "You look nice." I nearly forgot how to breathe. "Thanks. You look like someone who'd ruin my credit score." She laughed, the kind of sound that made everyone nearby look up. And just like that, the world outside the table disappeared. The dinner was supposed to be business, but the clients canceled last minute. We stayed anyway, half out of hunger, half because neither of us wanted to leave. We talked about everything we'd never had time for in the office: childhood dreams, bad breakups, the books that made us cry. She told me she once wanted to be an artist before the world told her to be practical. I told her I'd always written stories I was too scared to share. By the time dessert arrived, the conversation had grown quieter, heavier, the kind of quiet that means something's about to shift. Ava toyed with her wine glass, then looked at me. "I haven't stopped thinking about that night," she said softly. I froze. Her gaze held mine, steady, vulnerable. "Not because of the mistake," she continued, "but because it didn't feel like one." The words hit me harder than the tequila ever had. I searched her face, trying to find the joke, the smirk, but there was only truth. "Ava," I started, unsure how to form words when everything inside me was trembling. She leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed to be honest. For once." The restaurant faded, lights blurring into a soft haze. My pulse raced. I wanted to say I'd thought of her too, every day, in every passing glance and half-finished sentence. But instead, I whispered, "I don't think I can go back to pretending either." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Ava reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine, a quiet, electric touch that said everything words couldn't. "Then don't," she whispered. And just like that, the air between us changed, slow, magnetic, inevitable. When we finally stepped out into the night, the city lights glowed like Vegas all over again. Only this time, I was sober. And every step beside her felt like falling, carefully, consciously, and completely. After that dinner, nothing between us was the same. We didn't talk about it, But every glance, every pause, every shared silence carried a weight that hadn't been there before. At work, Ava was still Ava, sharp, calm, the woman everyone respected and half feared. But now there were moments when her eyes lingered a second too long, or when she said my name softly, almost like she was trying to remind herself how it sounded. I was worse. I found excuses to walk by her office. To hear her voice. To see the faint smile she tried to hide whenever our eyes met. It should have been simple: pretend Vegas never happened, sign the annulment, move on. But simplicity doesn't survive where feelings live. One Thursday evening, the office was empty except for the two of us. The rain outside streaked the windows, and the city lights blurred like watercolor. Ava was reviewing designs on her laptop, her glasses sliding down her nose. "Still here?" I asked, leaning on her doorframe. She looked up. "You too." "I'm reworking the campaign pitch. It wasn't hitting right." "Perfectionist," she teased, standing to stretch. I smiled. "Learned from the best." She walked over to the window, crossing her arms. The reflection in the glass showed her face, thoughtful, distant. "Sometimes I wonder if I built my life too neatly," she said. "Everything in order, every rule followed. And then Vegas?" I said softly. She turned toward me, smiling faintly. "And then Vegas." The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was full of everything we weren't saying. I stepped closer, not enough to cross a line, but close enough to feel the pull. "You could have blamed me," I said. "For that night. For all of it." "I could have," she agreed. "But I didn't want to." Something inside me cracked open. "You scare me sometimes," I admitted. Her brow lifted. "Why?" "Because you make me want things I shouldn't." Her expression softened, eyes full of something that made my chest ache. "You think I don't feel the same?" My breath caught. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the windows like a heartbeat. She took a slow step closer, then stopped, close enough that I could smell her perfume, faint and familiar. "We can't do this," she whispered. "You work for me." "I know. But I keep thinking about you." The words hung in the air, fragile and terrifying. And before I could say anything, she reached up, just lightly, brushing her fingers against my cheek. It was barely a touch, but it set everything inside me on fire. Then she pulled back, breath shaky. "Go home, Elena." I nodded, though my heart didn't move an inch. As I walked out, the reflection in the glass showed her still standing there, one hand pressed against her chest like she was holding something she didn't want to lose. Neither of us said it out loud. But both of us knew, this wasn't over. The weeks that followed were a study in contradictions. Ava and I worked side by side as though nothing had changed, yet everything had. Her voice still calmed me, her standards still terrified me, and her smile, rare, real, still made the world tilt. But the distance between us had become a living thing, pulsing and impossible to ignore. I started avoiding late nights at the office, because quiet rooms and low lamplight made it too easy to remember the way she'd looked at me, like I was the one person who could unravel her. But avoiding her didn't help. It only made me miss her. One Friday, she called me into her office again. "We're flying to Seattle on Monday," she said briskly. "Client wants an in-person pitch." I nodded, hiding the thud of my pulse. Business trips had become dangerous ground. Vegas had started as one too. Understood, I said, pretending to take notes that were nothing but scribbles of her initials. Her eyes flickered to my hand. You still wear it. I froze. What? The ring, she said quietly. I thought you would have taken it off by now. I tried, I admitted. It didn't feel right. Her gaze softened. Neither did taking mine off. There it was again, that invisible thread between us, fragile and unbreakable. She sighed, closing her laptop. Elena, I don't know how to do this. I've spent years building walls I thought I needed. And then you, her voice trailed off. You don't knock. You just walk through them. The words landed like a confession. I wanted to answer, to tell her I hadn't meant to, that it wasn't planned, that I didn't know how to exist in her world without breaking every rule. But before I could, her phone buzzed, and the moment shattered. Flight details are in your inbox, she said, suddenly composed again. Her tone was cool, professional, but her eyes gave her away. Seattle was gray and cold, fitting, considering the weather inside both of us. We nailed the pitch, shook hands, smiled for cameras. But later that night, when we returned to the hotel, the pretense cracked. Ava showed up at my door, hair damp from rain, eyes tired. Can we talk? She asked. I nodded and let her in. She paced for a moment, then stopped. I keep thinking about Vegas. About how easy it felt to just say yes. I swallowed hard. Maybe it wasn't the tequila. She gave a small, helpless laugh. Maybe not. We stood there, the hum of the city below us, the sound of our own restraint filling the space. Then she whispered, Do you ever wonder what would have happened if it hadn't been an accident? I took a step closer. Every day. Something inside both of us broke open, not with a kiss, not with words, but with silence that spoke too loudly to ignore. That night, nothing happened. But everything changed. Seattle rain had a rhythm, soft, constant, and oddly soothing. I woke early that morning, unable to stop replaying Ava's words from the night before. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if it hadn't been an accident? Yes. Every day. Every night. In every heartbeat I'd tried to ignore. When I walked into the lobby later, she was already there, coffee in hand, hair tied up, eyes distant. She looked like herself again, but there was something fragile in the way she held her cup, as if even caffeine couldn't steady her. Morning, I said, voice low. She looked up. Couldn't sleep? I shook my head. You? Not a chance. We both smiled, tired, knowing smiles. The car ride to the airport was quiet, filled with all the words we hadn't said. When we arrived, she reached into her bag and handed me a small envelope. What's this? I asked. Annulment papers, she said softly. I filled out my part. All you have to do is sign. The world tilted a little. I stared at the papers, then at her. So this is it? She sighed. It's the right thing to do, Elena. You deserve something simple. Someone who can hold your hand without worrying about a company policy. Is that what you want? Her eyes flicked up to mine, and for a heartbeat, they said everything she couldn't. Then she looked away. It's what makes sense. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it hurt. Since when did we ever make sense? Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. So I did. Vegas was chaos. It was impulsive and wild and stupid. But it was also real. You can call it a mistake, But I've never felt more certain about anything in my life than the way I felt standing next to you that night. She closed her eyes like the words were too much, or maybe exactly what she needed. Say something, I whispered. When she opened them again, there were tears she didn't bother to hide. I'm terrified, Elena. Of wanting this. Of wanting you. Then be terrified, I said softly. I am too. For a moment, we just stood there, airport chaos around us, two women holding on to a secret that felt too fragile for the world. Then she stepped forward and pulled me into a hug. It wasn't polished or careful, it was desperate, human, true. When she finally pulled back, she whispered, I don't want to lose you. Then don't, I said. She smiled through the tears, that same quiet, breathtaking smile that had undone me from the start. 3 months later, the ring was back on my finger, not because of Vegas or tequila or chance. But because we both chose it, sober, steady, and sure. No Elvis, no neon lights. Just her and me, beneath a sky that didn't need witnesses. And when she said I do again, this time, we both remembered every second.